I love the look of gimbal shots, but don't always have one with me, and sometimes I'm just lazy and don't want to use one. But the question is, today with our latest generation smartphones and apps, do we even need a gimbal? So I'm at a park and I've got an actor with me today. You may have seen him in one of my previous videos. He doesn't say a whole lot, but his performances are amazing, I gotta say. Now I'm not using just the naked phone. I have got a SmallRig cage on here with a handle from SmallRig and also a B-Script handle along with an ND filter. And this is mounted using a Moondog Labs multi-filter mount. And so the thing that's nice about this is when you're walking with it or doing a shot, you have multiple points of contact. Now you could do this with just the phone, but I find using a grip of some kind, whether it's a B-Script or a SmallRig or even a small little handle, doesn't really matter, can really help and give you better results. Before I get to the non-gimbal shots, I need to first talk about the app I'm using. And what makes this work is the new feature in Filmic Pro. It is cinematic stabilization. There's regular cinematic and cinematic plus. And then there's standard as well. Everything I shot in this video, I use cinematic, because the one thing you will see when using this type of stabilization is there is a lot of latency. That's on cinematic. And on the cinematic plus, it's very severe. What is that? A second, maybe almost 2 seconds of latency. So using the cinematic plus is challenging. So I found using cinematic is the way to go. And the results have been pretty good in my experience thus far. This type of stabilization comes from the native camera app, and it's had it for quite a while. And I did a video a couple years ago where I shot the whole thing handheld. I believe it was with my iPhone 11 Pro Max. I shot all in the native camera app, and it turned out pretty well. But now it's great to be able to use it in Filmic Pro. First up is what I call a dolly in or a push in. You're simply pushing in towards your subject. And it's a little bit bouncy here. I am walking on mulch that's been spread around the playground, and so not the smoothest surface, but again, it is handheld. And you'll notice that I'm actually walking fairly normally. I'm not really doing the ninja walk you would typically do with a gimbal. I'm doing it a little bit, but not a lot. And I should mention that I'm using the standard wide lens on these shots, except for one, and I'll point that out in a second. All right, now here's the opposite. It's the dolly out. So you're pulling away from your subject. Often walking backwards, I find you can get really smooth shots. Here it's a little bit swimmy, but I couldn't really do the footwork that I wanted because of the mulch. It's a little bit hard to see, but the ground is actually very uneven. So all things considered, it's pretty smooth. Next up, I'm doing a parallax style shot. You're more or less arcing around a subject. And as you're moving around, the background changes, almost giving a 3D feel to the shot. Now these shots are hard to do even with a gimbal. You'll see my footwork here, I'm kind of crisscrossing my steps. And by the way, if you're a filmmaker, get some Hokas. I just got these shoes for Christmas and my gosh, they're amazing. By far the most comfortable shoes I've ever owned in my life. But anyway, crisscrossing my steps here and simultaneously trying to keep the subject in the frame. And again, this is handheld. Even with stabilization, it's pretty bumpy, but by adding some post stabilization, you can make this look a lot better, and I'm going to show that in just a minute. All right, next up is the reveal shot, and I really like doing these. This is an easy way to establish a scene, reveal a character or a subject, and add production value to your shot. This is more about swaying your body and keeping the camera level than it is about footwork. And lastly, one of my very favorite kind of shots is shooting underslung. This gives a very dramatic look and can really be effective in movies especially. Think early Sam Raimi, Barry Sonnenfeld films, the early Coen Brothers movies. And of course you could speed it up and make it even more stylized if you wanted. And here, I'm not really worried about my footwork as much as I am just trying to keep the camera consistent level to the ground. In this shot in particular, it's important to have some sort of a hand grip. This would be really hard to do or almost impossible to do with just the phone alone. And by the way, this is the one shot during this demo that I have used the ultra wide lens. The rest of them were the standard wide. Now I mentioned earlier you can make these shots look better in post-production. And so now I'm going to show each one of these with a little bit of post-stabilization added in Adobe Premiere Pro using Warp Stabilizer. And so this just took a little bit of the bumpiness out. You can only do so much because the up-down stuff, whether you're shooting with a gimbal or you're shooting handheld, really can't be taken out in post. But again, considering this is handheld, I think it looks pretty good. And in particular, post-stabilization really helped this parallax shot. Now, to me, that looks like it could have been shot on a gimbal. This reveal shot was pretty smooth to begin with. And then the underslung, it took a few bumps out, but these kind of shots, being a little bit erratic or something, can actually help, in my opinion. It just depends on the subject matter, of course. So, do you actually need a gimbal? Well, just like when I did this originally on the 11 Pro Max, when the stabilization came out on the ultra wide, it is good, it's really good, but it's subjective and it depends on what you're doing. For me, if I'm shooting a movie or something that's a little more meaningful, then I'm gonna use a gimbal. But for quick shots on YouTube videos and of course family videos, this type of stabilization really works well. And so it's great to have this option in the native camera app and now in Filmic Pro. Thanks for watching. This is Blake Calhoun. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.